On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
Somebody might somehow be an overnight success, but if they have not been through the trials, if they have not been through the failures, if they have not been through the lowest of the lows, if they haven't learned how to struggle through the days when they just don't even want to get out of bed, if they haven't learned how to deal with the biggest freaking problems they could ever imagine, they're going to lose all of it.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolf, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. All right, everybody, I'm Chaz Wolf. Gathering the Kings this week, I've got Rocky Anderson, the King stage. Welcome, brother. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing great.
Good, man. Since our first conversation, I've been looking forward to this because there's a lot of guys in business that I just get the stuck up feeling from. But when I chatted with you, man, it was just like, man, that dude was real, just authentic and straightforward as they come.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, man. So I'm super looking forward to this conversation, but please tell us who you are. What industry are you in? What kind of business you have? Give us a little quick introduction here.
So Rocky Anderson, of course, and my business is ADC Wastewater Engineering. We design wastewater treatment systems for projects like housing developments, shopping centers, resorts, that kind of thing. And our specialty is projects that are not connected to public sewers. So we have to treat and somehow get the water back in the ground within the boundaries of the project. So what we really like to do is treat to reclaimed water standards, and then you reuse the water for landscape irrigation and that sort of thing. And if we can't do that, or if the project doesn't make sense, then we treat it to a point where we can put it back into the ground and then indirect aquifer recharge from there.
Yeah. Nice. That may have gone over, a lot of people's head. And so we're going to dive into some of this, maybe a little bit, maybe not the X's and O's of the actual engineering of it, but how you've built this business. And I'm just really excited about that piece of it. So before we do that though, what's that?
Sorry, just the short of it that we joke about is we do poo.
Hey, they say you're supposed to be able to say what you do in right. Like this much, and you did one. There you go. At least it's not as a crappy of a situation as a plumber.
That's very true.
Right?
And we don't walk around with our ass cracks hanging out. So I forgot to ask: is profanity allowed on this, or does it matter?
We're good, man. Okay, so I got a question for you. At this stage, you're crushing it, and for all intents and purposes, most people who are listening are like, Rocky's gotten to this stage of I can only dream of being where he is. So why do you keep pushing now, even after all the success?
I'm literally committed to finding the highest, best version of myself that I can possibly find. And each time that I get to a different level, and I don't mean just financially, I mean physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, everything. And of course, that all directly translates to my business. And 100%. Every time that I have sort of met the next level of myself, then I see an entirely another level of myself that's possible. And so I'm not somebody who's ever going to retire or anything like that. That's just not in my DNA. So I am just really committed to, I also feel like I have a lot to make up for with some of the circumstances of my own life. And so I just plan on pushing until I'm 6 feet under.
That's right. The purpose that you've kind of just identified of reaching for the next level or the best version of myself always. What gives you the mindset or the insight to understand that when you've gone to the next level, that then there's even another level above it? How has that worked for you? How have you figured that out?
Well, a lot of it is actually, to be honest, I'm in the Arte Syndicate, and a lot of it has been Andy Frisella and Ed Milet's coaching, and just really understanding that even dudes that are at their level, worth almost $1 billion a piece, and they are not. They still, they know that they could still go broke. They know that they have to keep pushing. They have to keep growing, or, they could lose it all too. So, and it's not like it's a fear. It's just that they know you're either growing or you're dying. And if those guys are saying that, and they obviously both have built incredible dynasties for themselves, and if they're saying that and they believe it, then who am I to refute that?
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk with guys who have the DNA of success. I mean, that can be defined many ways, but there's not usually a lot of self-absorbent actions. It's usually delay. Think about the next version. Think about the next deal. Think about, kids, grandkids, like the future. It's just it doesn't have to be right now where I get the result, but I'm pressing in for the next thing, which is what you just said, even about yourself. It's like, I'm satisfied with, like, I'm good with where I'm at, but I'm not like okay with being there forever,
Right.
Thankful to be here,
Exactly. And that's the balance, I think, is being, part of my morning routine is every morning, like, literally saying out loud to myself what I'm grateful for. And I think it's okay to be dissatisfied with where you are, because again, it's not just about money. To me, the financial side of it is the result of you having put in the daily effort on each and every part of your being. And then it just eventually takes care of itself, the money and the finances and all that kind of stuff, and the blingy stuff, and so to me, that's and of course I have a vision board, and of course the vision board has lots of cool stuff on it. But that stuff, that's not really what I'm chasing. What I'm chasing is who I have to be in order to actually have obtained that stuff and achieved that stuff.
That's so good. Like that point right there, because so many people get locked up in whether it's a vision board or just a desire for whether it's something material or something for their family or even something on behalf of others. But the point of it is that it takes finances to do that. And to what you're saying, it takes a certain character, a certain level, or a certain process of you becoming you in order to achieve the financial position to get those things.
Exactly.
Right. So like how do you project that onto someone now, or like maybe someone who's listening right now who says that they want a nice car, they want a nice house, but at the same feeling, they're like, oh, that sounds selfish. And maybe I just need to want to give money away, or maybe they want to give money away. They don't want a nice house, but either way, it's money. What would you say to that person that they're kind of in that limited thinking? They still want it, but they're limited in their thinking.
Well, I'd say a couple of things about that. I think we are in a little bit of a slippery slope in society where there's a loud contingent trying to make it sound bad to want to be wealthy and to want to be independent. And the bottom line, there are enough resources in the world for everybody to be wealthy. Sure, there might be a couple bad actors out there, but for the most part, people don't obtain $1 billion net worth by screwing people over. Right. They obtain that kind of net worth by bringing people up along with them. So whether you want to spend the money or give it away or whatever you want to do, the first thing I would say is nobody should be ashamed about wanting to make or actually making a lot of money. And nobody should be ashamed about flexing what they've gotten out of it. It's just because I know for me, I celebrate, dudes that I know, and I see they're driving a new exotic or somebody's upgraded their freaking airplane. I'm excited for them. I'm not feeling jealous. If they're ahead of me, it's inspiring me to think about, man, what do I need to do to I need to push harder. I need to push harder, So there's that piece of it. And then because I think if you can't celebrate people winning, you're never going to win, because you're literally putting the energy out to the universe that you don't want to win, that you think winning is bad. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
I think visualization is incredibly important around visualizing, not just seeing things, but actually, slowing it down to where you can feel it and taste it and touch it and smell it. And, if you want a Ferrari, what does it sound like? What does it feel like to sit in the driver's seat and fire that sucker up, or whatever the thing might be.
Yeah.
And really but then also visualize the feeling. Like, again, like, who are you that you have achieved these things? Like what's going through your brain right now? What are you dealing with internally right now?
Yeah.
Now that you're at that level, And then I think you have to be able to when you kind of come back to putting your vision into meaningful action, which is the other half of, because nobody gets anywhere by just dreaming. Nobody gets anywhere
Right.
by just thinking or just having fancy pictures on the wall. You have to take meaningful action. But I think you have to take the meaningful action as that person. You can't get to where you want to be by being who you are that's
Yeah.
managing your current situation. You have to be
Right.
that person
Yeah.
that is in your vision, and you have to walk like that and breathe like that, talk like that, and think about what that person would say about certain things and how they would act about certain things, and then do those things. You might not have the resources yet, but you can still walk in the same footsteps as who that person is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way to actually get there.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is so like spot on, especially for the listener, 6-figure trying to get to 7, which is just a small, like little jump in the road in the grand scheme of things.
Mhm.
But it's such a big mindset jump, because what you're talking about is everything when it comes to that type of switch, and it doesn't have to be necessarily just 6 to 7, but that's generally like the trajectory that I figured out, is that when that mindset shifts, things start to open up pretty big. And so how does someone listening right now who's, maybe they've been in business for a year or two, maybe they've been in business for 10 or 20 years, I don't know, but they just can't get past that place of where they are now, probably because they've been operating as the person that they are now, to your point. How do they pull that person forward? Right. Because they either don't believe it, or they haven't ever met that person, right? Or they don't know what that person's thinking or feeling. So how do they get into that place or that person that they're supposed to be now before that person exists?
So that's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Hey, you brought us here.
I think that, I mean, one of the things that I would say is, even though it seems like a monumental shift, man, you win in millimeters. I believe you literally win in millimeters, and it's every little thing that you do, and then do it over and over again, and you do a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and you just eventually, before you know it, you don't recognize yourself anymore. Like, you look back to the person you were 5 years ago, and you're like, oh shit, I would have never been like, I can't even go back to that way of thinking. So I don't know that, I'm sure there's probably people who have some sort of life altering epiphany and things just click and off they go. That's not my experience. So I've been in business for a little over 30 years, actually. I think I started when I was 23, and I went full time when I was 26.
Okay.
And I spent, really up until 10 years ago, I spent being that small person. And that I don't want to say that negatively. It's not negative, but just, I didn't see my value. I didn't see, I was self-employed is how I would put it, you know?
100%.
And my dad was eventually, he was a partner in a small engineering firm, and then became self-employed. And that's how I would describe him. He was self-employed. He wasn't an entrepreneur. He wasn't a scaler. He wasn't a builder. He was just self-employed. Didn't have any employees or anything else. And that's kind of how I saw myself. I sort of came into this business by accident, actually, even though my dad was an engineer. And I'm actually a high school dropout who happens to own an engineering firm. So
I love it.
I think we might have talked about that in the intro.
Yeah. Love to get into that.
And so it was really up until about 10 years ago that, that I didn't see myself as much. I had tried to actually build my business a couple of times, and I failed. I failed miserably. I went broke a couple of times. And then I just kind of, I don't know, I just made a shift about 10 years ago to start looking for people who were far more successful than I was, look at what they were doing, start following them, start reading about them, start learning, and just kind of start applying some of those, philosophies. And it was a lot of trial and errors and a lot of, inconsistency, but it was growth. And like I said, I wouldn't recognize myself from 5 years ago, but my 10 years ago, just be like, no way, no way, but it didn't happen overnight. It just kind of, it happened because of all the little things that I did over and over again. And even when I would, fail or fall down or whatever you want to call it, I'd just keep going and just keep working at it. And so that's what I would say. It's just, it's not fun. I mean, winning is fun, but the work is not fun. The work of like getting up at 3:30 in the morning every morning and, trying to have, what's that?
Pressing in.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether you want to or not, because it's not about the days that you feel like doing it. The separation is in the days that you don't feel like doing it, you do it anyway, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's the gym, whether it's saying I love you to your wife, or whether it's, pressing on a particular project that you got to get done, or whatever it is, it's the days that you don't feel like doing it and you do it anyway, and you do it like you do want to do it. You do it like you do love it. That's the separation.
Yeah. I've got this saying that confidence is a drug and winning is the dealer. And
Yeah.
it wraps up everything that you just said, because the person that's listening right now, they just need to win more.
Yeah.
That seems so simple, but whether it's over the course of a 30-year career or just waking up tomorrow when you said you were going to.
Well, that's a big thing that, I mean, really both Andy and Ed talk about that, but Andy especially, that, you have to start by winning the day, whatever that is for you. So like Andy has this thing called the power list. I happen to use it, but you got 5 things on there that those are the things you are going to get done that day. And some of them might be repeat things. Like, let's say you want to lose weight. Well, there better be something on there every single day, or you want to get in better shape. There better be something in there every single day about getting to the gym or doing whatever you're going to do. And then eventually, once you've done it for 3 months and you're still doing it every day, well, you could take that one off the list because now it's a habit, and now you can move on to the next thing that you want to improve upon. Or there might be some other critical stuff on there, like a particular phone call that needs to get made or whatever. And I tend to like to put one thing on there that scares me a little bit every day. Yeah, something that makes me uncomfortable. And if you check those things off by 11 o'clock in the morning, well, you just won the day. It's as simple as that. And because I think a lot of confidence, I think, comes from just doing what you told yourself you were going to do when nobody was listening.
Building a history of it.
Because then when shit hits the fan and you say, I can take care of this, I can fix this, or whatever it is, you will, because you've built a history with yourself of doing what you said you were going to do. Yeah. And so I think that's where the confidence starts, is just by winning the day in each and every, because you start stringing together a bunch of days that you win. Well, now you've won the week, and then eventually you've won the month, and then eventually you've won the year. And it's really an interesting process, I think, of having your big vision and having your big intentions, but then you really got to bring it right back to right now, and just what needs to be done right now.
Yep. I have found is that there are some people, entrepreneurs usually find themselves in one of 2 categories. They're good about the right now, which is, like your more integrator, your X's and O type of a guy who just head down doing the work. And then you got the other guy, there's a visionary who has a terrible time with the execution of the day.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, if we can get both of these together, then I can see who I'm supposed to be. I can try to pull that person into today. And then practically, like, okay, how do I be that person today through these things that I'm trying to get done, whether it's a habit that I'm trying to create or an actual difficult task that I need to like dial in and make sure that I get done, so that I can create this repeatable history with myself of, I'm going to do what I say. And I believe in myself because of it.
Absolutely. And to that point, taking action from the person, taking action from the perspective of your future self. Somebody who's winning like that, they're not procrastinating. They're not turning away from things that make them uncomfortable. Right. They're not avoiding conversations they need to be having. They're just getting in there and they're taking action, they're getting it out of the way, and they're moving on to the next thing, because they know that procrastination is a killer. It's the death knell, right?
Yep.
And so again, it comes back to that of like, okay, I want to avoid this, but this dude over here who's worth $100 million doesn't avoid this shit, so I better get to it.
Yep, exactly. Before we move on, you said something that I want to ask you, and hopefully you'll answer or be able to answer. You said you write something down that's scary. What scares Rocky Anderson?
It still is really uncomfortable for me because a big part of my work is relationships. Like, I mean, that's how we ultimately gain our clients, is by building relationships with, national builders and national developers and that sort of thing. And so It's still really uncomfortable for me to, even if it's sort of a almost warm lead, where I already know the division president of the Pacific Northwest, of X national builder, and it's uncomfortable for me to call him. We have a relationship, we've done projects together, so it's uncomfortable for me to say, hey, here's what we're doing now, and we're growing this side of our business, and would you be willing to introduce me to your counterpart in Arizona? And that's super uncomfortable for me. And then even once he's made the introduction, it's still uncomfortable for me to like be reaching out to the people he said, this guy's amazing, his company's amazing, you need to meet him, you need to introduce, just need to know who he is so that they can help you out. It's still uncomfortable for me to go, because I still, I think we all have it to a degree. I still have that like imposter, syndrome where, I'm sure I'm I'm a high school dropout. What the hell does anybody want to talk to me about engineering for? It's like, and so I really have to overcome that conversation all the time. Not always. Sometimes I just really own that I'm a badass.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm just like, I'm nervous about making this call. So
yeah, it's so good to hear.
Those kind of calls go on my power list a lot of having to get
of course, as they should, because you're the person that can make that call. And I just hope that the listener just took in what they just witnessed. Just a literal king in the business who says, some days it's difficult, and not some, a lot.
Yeah.
If we're being honest,
Yep.
It's the weight of the crown, it's the weight of the decisions or the phone calls or the things that make us uncomfortable, but you still make the call. Nobody really knew that you hesitated. Nobody really knew you had this back and forth. You had the back and forth. You maybe wrestled with yourself a little bit. Maybe you walked away from the desk, but you forced yourself to come back and you freaking made the phone call.
Yep. Absolutely.
That over the course of 30 years, I mean, how can you not win?
Right.
What would you say to the person right now who's less than 5 years into their business and they want obviously everything to happen right now, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I'm not at the 7-figure mark by 5 years in. I must not be out for this. I must not be good, like all the doubt, right? Like, what would you say to that person?
I would say that it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's an anomaly when stuff like that does happen overnight. And I don't think it really happens as much as people try to make it seem like it happens, because again, you cannot, it's just not possible. Somebody might somehow be an overnight success, but if they have not been through the trials, if they have not been through the failures, if they have not been through the lowest of the lows, if they haven't learned how to struggle through the days when they just don't even want to get out of bed, if they haven't learned how to deal with the biggest freaking problems they could ever imagine, they're going to lose all of it. It's going to be gone. It's going to evaporate. I mean, why do you think, so many sports figures and entertainers and whatnot, right? They boom, they explode into or lottery winners or whatever. They explode into money and it's gone before you even know it. I mean, there's dudes that are, that have made millions in professional sports that are back living with their parents,
Yeah.
And so it's not meant to happen overnight. It's just not. It took me a lot longer than I think it should have, because I was playing small, and I was in a relationship that sort of kept it that way, which was also my fault. But it's not supposed to happen overnight. You're supposed to have to do the work in order to get there, so that because you're building character along the way. You're building your stamina, you're building your toughness, you're building your mind, you're building everything that you need to build to have the discipline to continue to grow what you've built once you've gotten to where you think you wanted to get to. Because once you get to where you think you wanted to get to, it's time to keep the big boy pants on and keep big girl pants on, whatever, and just keep going. Because if you stop, if you think you can relax, you're going to start drifting and going backwards.
100%. Love it. Okay. So good. I hope the listeners paying attention. You've been able to give them mindset. You've been able to give them daily disciplines even. I mean, so far, like I'm ready to go explode into the next chapter. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm fired up, ready to go. It was funny because I just came off of our very first in-person mastermind event this past weekend. So I saw
cool.
I'm all burnt and stuff here on my face. We went deep sea fishing and, did the relationship stuff, similar stuff that you've been involved with. And that feeling that you walk away of like, man, I know I'm gathering with other kings. That just everything that you've given so far is just, man, you can tell that you've worked on you've worked on your business and people, and and that you give. And so my point in saying that is not to, blow smoke up your skirt, but to let let the listener know that like, wow, this is the real deal. And it's not like Rocky's done something that you can't.
Right.
It's just the process that he just described that you go through. And even when you think someone's been overnight, I've had people, look at my story and been like, well, man, you were super successful in your 20s. It's like, yeah, but I was also the guy for 10 years before that, being super disciplined and reading hundreds of books when my friends were partying. I was preparing just the same as you're talking about. And so I think that that's super important to remember, that you're in the process of the journey. You're in the process of the preparation. And so, and you've heard it from somebody who's been doing it for a long time. So give us just a little couple minutes here on how the entrepreneurship journey started for you. I know obviously you kind of mentioned briefly here on this call, but you gave me more before, the fact that you're a high school dropout, but that you own an engineering firm. Like how did that start? How did you fall into that? Give us a little bit of the backdrop there.
So yeah, the one piece of it is my dad was self-employed and he was a professional engineer, and he happened to do septic designs sometimes. So when I was even a little boy, I had a postal digger at 6 years old. I would dig perk holes for him. And I didn't know anything about the business. I'd just dig the perk holes for him. And then eventually I actually was intending to be a rock star. And that's a kind of a little bit of a different story, but it ended up flaming out by my own smallness. And so then I was a production manager at a steel company in my early 20s. And I just realized that it was just not built to work for somebody else. I applied for some other jobs. I couldn't quite put a finger on it, but I just hated working for somebody else. I just didn't like it. And so I happened to kind of know septic designs on the periphery. So I studied and took a couple exams and passed the local tests that I needed to pass, and started doing septic designs part-time while I was still working at the steel company. And I'd just, do evenings and weekends, go out and meet clients and handle the design work after hours and that kind of stuff. And so basically I had two jobs for a couple of years, and then I was finally making enough money to go out on my own, and I did. And then I think at the time, you got to bear in mind, this is like early 90s. I was doing maybe $1,500 a month part-time, whatever. And so I was like, all right, I can do this by, I can make it work. And then my first month out, $75 in revenues.
Wow. A whopping 75, huh?
Yeah. But that's kind of that's how it started. And I was positive that it was a temporary sort of thing until I found my passion, and blah, blah, blah. And then now here I am 30 years later. And for me, now I know exactly what I'm doing. But for me, especially as I kind of got busier and things got more complicated, and the projects got more complicated and everything else, there were times I just hated what I did. I absolutely, I was just sick to my stomach when I'd wake up in the morning and think about having to go do what I was going to do. And I couldn't really put my finger on it, but there were a handful of times where I was ready to just walk away. I was ready to just quit. And I literally was like, done. Like, I don't fucking care. I'm done. Yeah. And each time, this probably happened like 4 different times. And each time, just like a little voice in my head just would chime in and say, dude, I mean, you've already got this reputation. You've already got this clientele. You've got infrastructure. You've got, whatever. And like, if you're just going to walk away, you're not talking about selling a business. If you're just going to walk away from what you're doing, why not? Like, how could I retool it in a way that would actually make me want to get out of bed in the morning? And so I did that. And then of course, then that became to a point where I didn't like it. So then I do it again. And I just kind of really almost by accident did that like 4 times. And then until I actually got it to a place where it's like, all right, I can like, this is cool. I like what I'm doing. And then the scaling thing and everything else that we're working on now is an entirely different conversation. That's like whole different thing. But I would have never gotten to the point that we are now, where we're ready to really take off, if I hadn't been through those points where I wanted to give up and I didn't.
Yeah. What you just said was pretty profound, where you said that, you were doing something that you didn't necessarily find the most joy in, but you were doing it because that's what you were doing. And that's just kind of the simplicity of it, really. But the mindset that you had in that moment was, why not just retool it or change the circumstances to where maybe it is something that I can enjoy or something that I do like. And so you made some adjustments, my guess is that you hired a couple of people. you put some you put some people in place, or some structure in place, and then you kept on a certain role and you gave certain things away. And then you do that again and again. And now you've got this variation of yourself as well as a team that is prepared to scale much, much larger than just what most people think of as scaling. But was there a tipping point for you in that, of like, okay, was this just me trying to figure out the business to something where I liked, or was there help that you had, a book that you read, anything like that came across the way that gave you the idea of, okay, well, if I retooled this, then it could be something that was good for me? Or was that just inside of you?
It was literally just, I was just done. And then it just was, and it just kind of came to me each time.
Yeah. Good.
But
Okay.
It was interesting because each time that I had it, I'd forgotten that I'd already done it before. The third time, I think I've realized like, oh, well, you've done this before. You could do it again. Like you can
Yep.
It's okay to do that. So it got easier.
It's okay to analyze, make some adjustments, and move forward in a slightly different way.
Yep.
That's good. That's good freedom right there, honestly, because things are going to ebb and flow in business all the time, up and down, around and around we go. Okay. Got a question for you on decisions. Okay. I want you to tell me a good decision that you made, specific as you can, that was just super rock star of you.
If I'm going to be totally 100% honest, if I'm being 100% honest, because there are other examples, but I'll be leaving something on the table that isn't, that I could say, which is,
sure.
It kind of ties into my worst decision. My worst decision was choosing to marry the partner that I did back when I was young. And because I didn't even know it until I ended that relationship 25 years later, that's what was keeping me small. You adjust your identity temperature to what you believe in yourself. And maybe some people are immune to it, but man, it's, your spouse goes a long way towards what you believe in yourself. If you've truly married the right person, you've married your best friend, your confidant, and somebody who, you really can confide in. If you haven't, then it's just constant tension and negativity. And so best decision 1A was actually choosing to get divorced after 25 years of marriage. And we had 2 older adopted kids. We didn't have any biological kids. And that was like the most scary thing I've ever done in my life, because we met when we were 17 years old, and I'd never really been on my own per se, if you will, in that regard. And just not knowing if I was making the biggest decision of my life and potentially just sending my life down a freaking, train wreck.
Just full of fear.
Totally full of fear. And even though the other side of me was totally liberated about it, totally 100%, 100% sure that this is what I'm doing. There is no way I'm turning back on this. And half of me saying, you're going to fucking die.
Literally. The uncertainty of the unknown.
Yeah. Because part of it too was I literally gave her every ounce of cash we had, every ounce of equity we had. I took all the debt, and I ended up taking on a lot of unsecured private debt, personal debt, in order to, I just wanted the Band-Aid ripped off. I wanted it done. So I went broke again, and literally broke. There were Fridays where I didn't know how I was going to come up with 12 grand on Monday to pay staff and pay my lease and that kind of shit. And then, so I got into this habit of okay, I can't afford to think that I'm screwed. So as soon as I start thinking I'm screwed, I'm screwed. There's no other thing. There's literally no other alternative other than to be screwed if I start telling myself I'm screwed. Right. So instead, I just started looking at what can I, even if I can't generate invoices because work isn't to a certain point or whatever, what can I actually do to just push things forward, move work forward, keep everything moving at as high of a level as I possibly can, because it's the only thing I can think to do to just kind of create the energy in the universe. And just, I have to just trust that it's going to work out. And sure enough, there were probably 3-4 times where I literally had no idea where the money was going to come from. I mean, I knew, I had invoices floating out and blah, 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 but I had no idea when somebody was going to pay me or whatever. And every single time the money came through, every single time I'd wake up in the middle of the night, the night before the big day when I needed to write a lot of checks or send a lot of payments out. And sure enough, somebody, 1 or 2 clients who would have made a big deposit in my account, it was just enough to cover everything. It wasn't like I could breathe again. It was just okay, I made it through this cycle. And just best decision 1B, if you will, was I didn't even know it at the time. that I would be saying this, but marrying my current wife, because it's been a game changer around just her encouragement and her belief in me, and what she sees in me that I wasn't seeing in myself yet. You know, now I actually can generate that for myself. Now I actually do, because I come from a super dysfunctional family, and super just highly abusive and dysfunctional family, and neglectful family. It's given me a lot of strengths as to who I am today. And I wouldn't change it, because I wouldn't want to be anybody else today. It took me a long time to get out from under that cloud, to really start understanding my worth, my intrinsic worth.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And so as you were working on yourself in that, even letting, first wife go and then second wife coming and kind of stepping in to a level that you had already been building, I'm sure just was like gasoline on the fire that was already starting to build.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, you've answered the good and bad decision in one foul swoop, my friend, which is great. I think that, I guess the takeaway here is that you're right. The spouse matters, man. I mean, whether the spouse is involved in the business or not,
Absolutely. Yeah. Because my current wife is not, zero involvement whatsoever. Like I have a very detailed list of things that she'll need to do if something happens to me.
Sure. Yeah. That sounds like my piece of paper.
Yeah. But it's like super detailed out. Like, here are the access codes. Here are the passwords. Like, here's what you're going to need to do for 2 weeks until so-and-so can step in and kind of help out. And, but it'll be stuff she's never had to touch in her life, and hopefully we never have to think about it. But
exactly.
But yeah, she's not involved in it at all. And I prefer it that way. I personally, I know a lot of people successfully work together as husband and wife, but I really love the separation there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's identity for both, parties, especially if there's not a desire there. It's funny that you said all the setup. Julie and I are the same way. I'm like, here are the 2 people you need to call. They'll know what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't lose these 2 phone numbers.
Yeah, right. Whatever you do.
They have everything.
And by the way, would you please practice opening the safe a little more often?
Right.
Because it's the manual style. It's like, you have to be able to do it under duress. It's easy to do when you're not stressed. So just, keep practicing it, because you're going to be kind of stressed out if something happens.
Well, I think everybody needs to have that. Although funny, having things in place is a big deal. So
it's a huge deal. It's a part of, for me, it's a big deal around being able to sleep at night, because
how many more moving pieces are happening, and the weight of the crown, like we were just talking about before we got on the air. It's like the weight of the decisions that you and I make, or others like us, where it's like not necessarily one decision gone wrong and it unravels, but like there's lots of plays being made, investments in here and business here, teams being built here, people here. And, that without you, or at least the expertise of you, could make her world a mess.
Yeah.
The power of what is it? Just provider, the fact that we want to just not only be provider, but like a covering, really, is what it is. Because it's even past you. Right.
Yeah. It is. And it's a really cool, to me, it's like I just feel like it's an honor to be able to lean into being a provider and a protector. And I love it. I love everything about it. Right down to thinking about, hey, practice the combination of the safe a few times, will you?
Yep. We could probably have a whole nother show. I'll go even as far as like walking into rooms. I'm like, hey, you see that door over there? See that door over there? Like, see those people over there?
Yeah.
Situational awareness.
She always, like, on one hand, she appreciates it, but she always laughs at me, because she knows I want to be seated to where I can see out towards everything going on in the restaurant. I don't want my back to the door.
Nope. And I've done a quick scan. I've taken a picture.
Yep.
That's good. Okay, let's go to the speed round. This conversation has been so good. I've just allowed it to just flow, but I want to hit the speed round questions before we go. All
right.
What is the one metric inside your business that you would choose to track if you could only pick one thing to track?
Jesus. I guess I would say it's an interesting one, because maybe it's not a typical one, but I would say, is everybody consistently and always following all of our procedures and protocols to a T? Because if they are, that means our culture is there and intact. It means our quality is there and intact. It means our commitment is there and intact. And if those things are intact, there is no way we don't win.
Love it. Great answer. Okay. What book would you recommend that a six-figure owner read?
That's so hard. I would say probably because I'm reading it right now, but it actually is a pretty amazing book. Ed Milet just put out a new book, The Power of One More.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen
I've
it.
heard, haven't gotten it yet, but I've heard lots about it.
And because if I wasn't going to say that, I'd probably say, Think and Grow Rich, or maybe even Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Outwitting the Devil is an incredible read. But Ed refers a lot to Napoleon Hill. So I would say the thing about his book is that he really puts a lot of highly tactical things that you can just do right now to get in action. And really the Power of One More is just, it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about, one more rep, one more set, one more phone call to a client, one more back check on your quality before something goes out the door, one more I love you to your wife, whatever it might be. But it's the power is in, and it's true, the power is in that one more. That, like I said, we win in millimeters, and the degree of separation between people who are making 7 or 8 or 9 figures and somebody who's making 6 figures, it's really not that big. You go hang out with Ed and Andy, they're just normal dudes. They're not drifting. They're as intentional as it gets. And it's such a little nuance. But, I think if you truly become that person who doesn't stop at good enough, never stops at good enough, who never walks by something that they see isn't quite right and doesn't stop and fix it. If you become that person in just little increments, there's no way you're not going to win. There's just no way. So anyway, I like that book a lot because it really talks a lot about that.
That's good. Okay. Do you intentionally network or mastermind with other entrepreneurs, and why?
Yeah. So, it's part of why I said yes to coming on your podcast, because, I love talking to other business owners, and I love getting inspired by just the energy and I feel energized by this conversation,
100%.
And so I say yes a lot to that kind of stuff. And then also we have a pretty solid Arete syndicate group in Arizona, actually, that's like 30 people strong. So we get together once a month, and it's usually 12 to 15 of us, and everybody's kind of pushing each other, and a lot of us have become friends. And then I also go to the Arte Syndicate has a summit once or twice a year, and I go to those as well. I try to only surround myself with people who, when I leave, I feel energized. If I notice that I'm feeling drained or neutral, I'm probably, if I notice that a couple more times, that person's probably not going to be in my life anymore.
Yeah. That's a good barometer, a good litmus test to be able to go, is this person in or out? Mm-hmm. And if you feel inspired or ready to go charge the hill after spending time with them, that's probably a good one to keep.
Yeah.
Okay. I got 2 more questions here for you. This one is a good one. This is a new one, actually. If you only had 1 hour each week to run your business, what would you do in that 1 hour to successfully run your business, just like you do now?
I think I would go back to that one metric, making sure that the actual execution is occurring. I would focus all on that, because I just know that if everybody's executing, it means the culture's there, blah, 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 blah. It means it's all there,
all the way
and
down.
There's no way we don't win. And so if I had to only have an hour, that's what I would have to focus on.
Yeah. I love the connection between those 2 answers. Okay. Last question. Rocky, if you lost it all again, what would you do?
Same thing I've always done. It's interesting because, what would I do? Number one, I'd make sure my family is good. And number 2, I'd get right back to work, and I'd look for a problem to solve, and I'd start working on solving that problem. If for some reason it couldn't be this business anymore, for whatever reason, I don't know what that would be, but I would just try to find a new problem to solve, and then get to work on solving it and providing value. Because if you find a problem to solve and you focus on providing value and don't worry about the outcome, you're committed to what you want to achieve, but you don't worry about the outcome in the moment, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Love that answer. Rocky, if someone connected with you today, they want to reach out to you, they want to figure out how to find you on social media, where can they find you?
Instagram, I'm just on, it's i.m.rocco, and ROCKO. And business-wise, it's Rocky at ADC Wastewater Engineering. And those are probably the 2 best ways to find me.
Perfect. Brother, you have been an incredible source of value today. The fact that you're willing to give your time to help other entrepreneurs speaks so much of your character. And so thank you for that. Thank you for even just the inspiration you've given me today. And I hope that there's future deals for us to be had. So looking forward to those moments in the future for us.
Great.
Thanks for listening to Gathering the Kings. We hope you got a ton of value today and learned a thing or two about taking your business to 7 figures and beyond. If you desire more and want a community around you to help you get there, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. That's gatheringthekings.com. And I want you to apply for our next Becoming a King 90-day intensive. We are extremely exclusive by nature as a group. What that means is that we're really wanting only the entrepreneurs who take their business and targets super serious to apply. So if that's you, you think you got what it takes to level up your business, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com and apply. And we will see you on the other side.